Hello everyone, thank you for watching Edupedia World videos. So in this video, the transactions and tools in CTS, that is the second part, we are going to learn about the transactions which are used in TMS, the Transport Management System. So in the previous video, we have learned about the transactions which are used in the Transport Organizer. Okay, so we have learned about SE09, SE10 and SE01. Then we have learned what is a change request. Okay, so now we will see what are the different transactions which are used in the transport management system. The transport organizer supports the software development team in its work until the release of a change request. So we have seen this earlier. So the transport organizer is mostly used by the development team. Okay, so they do some developments or changes, okay, which is recorded in a change request. Any modification to the object should be recorded in a change request. Okay, so they work on change requests and they release it. Now thereafter, the transport management system supports the administration in importing the request into the target system. Now the work is of the basis administrators, so they will have to move these requests into the target system. Use the transport management system to organize, carry out and monitor transports between SAP systems. So the TMS is used to perform these imports. Okay, you can monitor them and import them between various SAP systems. No user actions at the operating system level are required, since all the required information and functions are provided in the SAP system. So you need not work at the OS level, okay, because all the functions are available at SAP level. The transport management system offers the following functions: configuration of the transport routes with a graphical editor. So first thing, when the system implementation is done, you will need to configure the transport routes. Okay, so it will give you a graphical editor also to configure the transport routes. Then display of the import queue for all SAP systems in the transport domain. So we have discussed this earlier also. This transport management system is a central tool. Okay, so where we have learned about domain controller, okay, transport domains and transport groups. Okay, so if you log into any system in the transport domain, you will be able to see the import the all other systems. Okay, and you can navigate to the import queue of any system in the transport domain. Import of all requests in the import queue. So if you choose a particular system, then you can see all the requests which are imported, which are waiting to be imported, or which have been failed, whatever it is. And imports of all requests in a project. Okay, so the requests can be associated in a project. Okay, so import of all requests in a project also can be done from TMS. Then import of individual requests. Okay, so mass imports can be done, as well as single transport can be selected and imported. Then TMS quality assurance and transport workflow. Okay, this transport workflow, where we have read about this term earlier also, that whenever a developer creates a change request and releases it, a mail is triggered to the administrator. Okay, so he'll be notified that yes, this request is now released. We have to work on it. We have to go and import it in the target system. And special features while using multiple transport directories. So in a transport domain, you will have at least one transport group. You can have more than one transport group also. A transport group is nothing but the systems which share the common transport directory. So you can have, in a domain, you can have two transport groups, so you'll be having two transport directories. So how to do the imports between these two transport groups? Because they have two different transport directories. So the HTMS is the transaction to start the TMS in SAP. So the transaction name is STMS. Okay, so this is the central transaction, okay, for TMS. Okay, SE09, SE10 and SE01 are more, they come in the development area for creating the change request and working on the change request. When it comes to import queues, transport routes, transport layers, okay, monitoring of transports, everything, okay, STMS is the transaction in SAP. Now, displaying and changing the import queue. The import queue display shows all change requests flagged for the import for the SAP system. The import queue display provides the following information: the order in which the requests are imported. So when we talk about the import queues of a particular system, okay, so the order in which the change requests are released, okay, in the same order they arrive in the import queue of the target system. Then the name of the change request, okay, request type, the source client, the return code, the import flag, unconditional mode, change request owner, project name, the target client, okay. Change request short text. The owner and the short text can be only displayed if the transport request exists in the login system. The source system of the change request is contained in the transport domain. This change request has already been imported into an SAP system in the transport domain, and the system is located on the transport route before the SAP system for which the import queue is displayed. The active flag import status of the request. So I'll show you the import queue. So this is the import queue. Now the first thing is, when we spoke about STMS, when you go to the transaction STMS, this is the initial screen which is presented, the transport management system. Okay, so here the truck icon you have, if you click on that, you'll go to the import overview like this. See the import overview. Okay, so this domain controller is DR1. Okay, we have learned about domain controller. So it's the reference system which has all the configuration, and this configuration is distributed to other systems. Okay, so DR1 is the domain controller. This STMS you can execute in any system. Okay, from there if you go to the import overview, it will show you all the systems in that domain. Okay, we have 3 systems here. Okay, and this production system is yet to be configured. So like this, you'll see all the systems which are configured in the transport domain. Okay, if you click on any one of the system, then it will take you to the import queue of that system. Okay, so that's why STMS is a centralized decode. See here, you will see all the import requests. Okay, the request name, the client, who is creating it, okay, and the text, everything, the status, everything. So this is the actual import queue of a particular system. Okay, the status tick mark says that it is successfully imported. Okay, a truck, that this truck symbol denotes import in STMS. So here that import is running, and here you have all the functions like this full truck and this half truck. Half truck means you select a single request, and if you click on this half truck, that request will be imported. If you click this full truck, then all the requests which are waiting here will be imported. So in a production system, please do not by mistake also click this full truck. Okay, so then all the requests which are there will get imported. Generally in a production system, we do the transports in a proper way, that is probably only once in a week. Okay, and even the order, everything has to be taken care. So here SAP what it does, the order in which the requests are exported, in the same order they arrive in the import queue of the target system. Okay, so sometimes you may have to change the order while importing. Okay, by checking the dependencies among the various change requests. So that's why if you click this full truck, then what all order they arrive in the import queue in the same order, they'll get imported by default. Okay, so please don't click this full truck anytime. Okay, we have to select each request and click this half truck button. So then only that request will be imported. Okay, so this is the import queue. Import queue is nothing but once they are released from the development system, or say like they are already imported in the QA. Okay, if they are released from the development system, they'll come and sit in the import queue of the QA. Once they are imported successfully into the QA system, they'll come and sit in the import queue of the production system. Then it says like, see, I'm waiting to be imported into the system. Unless the request is actually imported into the system, the changes of that change request will not take place. So you need not worry that by mistake, if you have added any request to the import queue, that is okay. You can still delete it also. You can select it, okay, and you can delete the request also from the import queue. Okay, so this is the initial screen of SDMS. When you go to this imports overview button, this is what you see. All the systems which are in that domain are listed. Okay, here this production system is still to be configured, that's why it's grayed out. Okay, we have the development and the QA, the quality assurance system. So you can navigate to any system by double clicking it, then it will show you the import queue of that system. So what does that import queue show? The order in which the requests are imported, whatever order it's displayed there, the name of the change request. Okay, that should be there. The request type, the source client, the return code, the import flag. Okay, we have the unconditional mode, the owner, the project name, the target client, and the short text, the active flag, and the import status of the request. So all the details about this particular the import queue can be seen. And here there is an option like log. Okay, this button, the log button. Okay, so you can go to that log also, so that will give you further more details like with what return code it got imported. Okay, you can further go into the inner details of this change requests which are waiting in the import queue. Okay, so this half truck is used for single import. Full truck, it imports all the requests sitting in the import queue in the order in which they are presented here. This is the log one, this is the monitor. So that's what. So from here you can do a number of operations. Okay, so if you want to check the import queue, go to SDMS, go to that system, and you will see the import queue there. Now this screen, it shows the transport routes and the layers. Okay, so even this can be from this initial screen only. Using these options we can navigate to the transport routes. Okay, so we have the development, the quality, and the production. So here you have the consolidation route and the delivery. So we have two layers in the consolidation route, that is the standard one and the SAP. Okay, the standard one is named as CDR1 and the other one is SAP. Okay, and here we have the delivery route. Okay, you can change the routes also, but then you have to save it. Okay, and you have to distribute it again. That's what. So whatever configuration related changes we do in the domain controller, okay, so that has to be saved and distributed to all other systems also. Say like here you have added some new system, some test system from development, in between development and quality. Okay, so you have made the configuration changes in this development system. Now unless you save it here and you distribute it, okay, it will not get effect. That is, unless the distribution is done to the other systems from the development box or from the domain controller, okay, so the other systems will not get the new configuration changes. That's why the distribution is very, very important. Okay, so you have to make changes in the domain controller. Whatever configuration changes we want to make, we have to make it in the domain controller and then save and distribute it to all other systems in the domain. Okay, So this is the initial screen of STMS. Okay, so from here, through various options, okay, you can navigate, you can check the transport routes, the transport layers, okay, all those things. Okay, then if you go to the imports overview here, you will see the list of all the systems in that domain. Now if you double click on any of the system, that will take you to the import queue of that system. Okay, so STMS is a centralized transaction. Okay, you can execute it from any system in the domain, and we will see the same information. Okay, now so that's about displaying and changing the import queues. Okay, so here we have seen the import queues. Okay, what information it has. Now to adjust the import queue in an SAP system, call the transaction STMS. Choose the struct button. You have to choose the struct button is the import overview. Okay, so that's why from here you navigate to the struct button. Then position the cursor on the SAP system whose import queue you want to display. Right, so here you position your button, or you double click it whose import queue you want to see, or you position it here and click this display button. Okay, you choose display, the import queue of the selected system appears, or you just double click it, you navigate to the import queue. You can display the import queue of an SAP system from each SAP system that belongs to the transport domain. Yes. Now if you are working with several transport directories or with external systems, you may need to adjust the transport directories before you can see all the marked requests. Now in a transport domain, we have different transport groups we can have. Okay, but it should have at least one transport group. A transport group is nothing but the set of systems which share a common transport directory. Okay, now what happens, like if you have two transport groups, okay, so when import runs in SAP, we have discussed earlier that they are actually files. Okay, for every change request it has some files at the OS level. So if you are doing a transport from one transport group to another, they have different transport directories, then you will have to manually FTP send those files to the target transport directory. Okay, so from transport directory A to transport directory B, you have to move them. Okay, so if two systems, they belong to different transport groups because they have different transport directories, and you are trying to do an import, we will have to move those files from one transport directory to another. Okay, now you can go straight to the import queue of the system you are logged on by entering the transaction code STMS-import. Okay, so if you want to directly go to the import queue of the system you are logged on, this is the transaction STMS-import. Okay, so this is about the transport management system. Okay, so STMS is the transaction. Okay, from this transaction we can do all the things. We can carry out an import, we can check the logs, we can check the transport routes, we can check the transport layers. Okay, and this transaction is, it's centrally configured. So from any system in the domain, if you run this transaction, we will see the same information. Okay, and we have here the slide shows what does the import queue display. So all these things the import queue displays. Okay, and then the truck button. Okay, the truck button takes you to the import overview, and if you want to import also, here you have the truck button, the half truck and the full truck. So please don't click the full truck. In any case, if you click the full truck in this import queue overview, it's all the requests which are waiting, they'll get imported in the order they are in the queue. Okay, that might be dangerous because sometimes the sequence has to be taken care. Okay, so that's why it's better to select individual request and click this half truck button. Okay, so only that request will be imported. Now when we select an individual request and we try to import it, it will ask for certain details. Okay, so there it will ask you for the target system where this request has to be imported, okay, and the client. Okay, so anyways, if you go to the import queue in that particular system where it has to be imported, still it will prompt you for the system name and the client. It will ask other details like, you know, the time when it has to be imported, like immediately or after some time, okay, such things. Okay, and you have other options to take also, whether pre-import can be done, those things. Okay, so when you click either of this small truck or this mass truck, it will ask you for other details like the client, the time, or, you know, regarding the import which has to take place. So from SAP we can manage all the transports, even though the actual transport procedure happens through the calls which are made at the OS level. Okay, so when you try to do from SAP will try to invoke those calls, that is the TP calls, the underlying TP calls which actually happen at the operating system level. Okay, so the movement of the files, okay, because every change request in a transport is associated with certain files at the operating system level. Okay, so when we do an import from SAP, those files are, you know, actually they move from one system to another, or if they are in, okay, so if they belong to different transport groups, then we have to manually move those files, or if they share a common transport directory, the content of the files is imported into the new system. Okay, so from SAP we are just managing all the transports, but ideally it happens at the OS level from calls known as the transport protocol calls. Okay, so SAP triggers those calls at the operating system level, and the content which is there in the files of the change request gets imported into the database. Okay, so that is how transport works. If they are in different transport directories, then you will have to move those files also. Okay, without those files, doing transports at SAP level is meaningless. Without the files, the change request files, the transport files at the operating system level, we can't do anything. Those files are very, very important for every change request. Every change request has certain files, okay, and those files are important. From SAP you just manipulate it, but ideally it happens at the OS level through various transport protocol TP calls. Okay, we call them as TP, transport protocol. So the content in those files gets imported into the database. That is only a transport. From the development system, when you export any change request for the first time, automatically for the files are created at the operating system level. Once the export is done in the transport directory, the files are created. So when you import it into a different system, the content of those files is imported into the database. So that's why when we have different transport directories, we will have to manually move those files also. Okay, so in the next video we'll learn about the transport tools at the OS level, that is the TP and R3 trans. Okay, R3 trans is an important tool, so we'll learn more about these calls which actually run at the OS level. But however, SAP suggests that please don't perform transports, invoke those transports at the OS level unless otherwise required. SAP suggests to perform all the transports from STMS in SAP system only. Now, when we talk about transports, we have certain other tools like a RevTrack, Transport Express, etc. Okay, so we talked about this earlier also in the previous slides of the CTS videos of the CTS. Now what happens is, like, those are third-party tools. Okay, so those are linked to SAP. So whatever import queue we are able to see it here, okay, the same import queue you will see it in your Transport Tool Express or RevTrack or whatever it is. Okay, so there in that case we'll not do the transports from SAP level also. Okay, we'll do the transports from the third party. We'll log into that tool and we perform the transport. Okay, so at the OS level we have the actual calls working. Okay, on the top we have SAP STMS where we can do the transports. Okay, but most of the in most of the business scenarios, they generally use a third-party tools for performing transports. Why? Now, whenever in SAP an export is done, it immediately goes and sits in the import queue of the target system. Okay, or if it's imported into the QA successfully, it will go and sit in the import queue of the production system, depending upon the transport route. Okay, so once it is imported successfully in the previous system, it goes and sits in the import queue of the successor system in the transport route. Okay, so in SAP you can't control it. Simply if somebody goes and clicks the request and clicks this after button, it will get imported. But using these third-party tools, you can introduce other concepts like approvals. Okay, you can reject it, all these things. See, like the export is done from the development system by the developer, so the request gets created in that tool, whatever tool you are using. Say it's a transport express tool, it gets created there. You create the request there. Now when it is moved ahead, okay, so now after it's exported from the development, it sits in the import queue of the QA. So in that tool, what it happens, it will not be immediately available in the queue of the QA system, but in the middle there is one step as approval. So unless that approval is made, it will not come into the queue of the QA. We can approve it or we can reject it. Okay, even though that request is sitting here in the import queue of QA system in SAP, in that tool, first it will wait for approval. Okay, so when such tools are used, they will not run STMS and do imports from STMS. They will always do the imports from that particular tool only. So only after it's approved, then it comes and sits in the queue of the QA system. So there also you will perform the import how you do in STMS. Okay, when you do that import, that tool is linked with SAP. It will invoke the import from SAP. Okay, so that connectivity is made. So whenever you there, instead of selecting here and clicking this transport button, and that tool, you will do the same thing, transport. Okay, so there it will get imported. So after it gets imported into QA, again you will have steps like, yes, it finished testing successfully, next approval into production. You can introduce 2 more steps. Okay, but however, here once it gets successfully imported into QA in SAP, it goes and sits in the production queue. But there you can add intermediate steps of approval. Okay, or QA finished successfully. Okay, and there you can add attachments also. Say like if the testing was successful for that particular change request, so here in SAP you can't add any attachment here, but there in those tools you can add the attachments of all. Say like some program was there, changes were done. Okay, it went into QA, it gave successful results. So you can put all those mails as an attachment, or you can run it in SAP and put those screens as an attachment there. So that gives a wider way of controlling things. Okay, so there you can approve, you can add attachments, relevant attachments, and then again for production, approval will be there. Okay, so they have to approve it there in that tool. So then only it goes and sits in the production queue. Then we have to import it from there. Okay, so there things will be more easy, it will be more transparent. Okay, we can add various other steps, we can add attachments, we can add documents for the change request. Okay, so we can put some documentation also. Okay, here just maximum of 1 line documentation you can put for a change request in SAP, but in those tools you can add attachments, write documentation, add additional steps of approval, all these things. So that's why in a real-time business scenario, they will do from STMS also, but generally they'll use a third-party tool like Transport Express is a famous tool, then RevTrack. So these are various tools which are used for carrying out the transports. Okay, so and one more important thing is, when they use those tools, we can have different systems. Like you will have your say like a CRM system, you have a BI system, you have, okay, an ECC system you have. So there, the transports of all these systems will be consolidated. Okay, so that is also very good, right? So that is, it acts as a central repository for carrying out various transports of various systems. Okay, even the Java system transports, you can put them there. So that's how you can include a dual stack system transports also can be kept there. So all these things, just to keep track of all the transports happening in your business. Your business may contain n number of SAP production systems. So all those transports can be linked to that tool. All these systems can be linked to that tool, and the transports of all the systems can be carried out from that tool, which is a central tool connecting all your system landscapes. Okay, so that's the advantage of tools. But however, STMS is the basic method. Okay, small projects, they just rely on STMS only. But however, if the business is very huge, okay, they will generally install third-party transport tools. Okay, and now the other important thing is, like, even though we are running it from SAP, it's actually the TP calls which get invoked at the operating system level, which do the actual transport, the transfer of the content from the transport files into the database. Okay, so in the next video we'll learn about these TP and R3 Trans is one more tool. We'll learn about them. Okay, thank you.